Hello, and in this lesson we are going to be taking the mountain range that we started last week, and we are going to be adding some tone, some texture, some depth and some atmosphere to it using a range of different brush techniques. So the first thing I need you to do is load up your previous week's mountain experiment, and we're going to push Command H to hide the grid lines that were there before. We're then going to make sure we have the layers panel selected, and we're just going to hide the foreground, the midground, and turn off the saturation layer. On mountain range 1, what we're going to do is start adding in some shadow. So the first thing we have to think about is the way light works. So if I just take another layer, essentially we're going to pretend that our sun is coming in from this direction. Bear with me 1 second. Coming in from this direction, and what that means is all the light is going to be on these sides of the mountain where that light comes in. Okay, so what it also means is the shadow is on the opposite side of that. So anywhere that the light is, the shadow will be opposite. So to do this, we're going to create a new layer, and we're going to call this MR1, and we're just going to add shadow at the end. So we double click on the word in the layers panel and just rename that to MR1 shadow, and then we're going to go to the polygonal lasso tool by clicking and holding on the lasso tool menu and clicking on polygonal lasso tool. What I'm going to do is just zoom in a little bit while pushing Command plus. And then from this, I'm going to start just drawing on the shadow, starting at the peak, cutting down, and kind of just adding a little bit of kind of rocky kind of texture to this, and clicking once and just moving along very quickly. And then what I'm going to do is just add in that back shadow, which is around here. And I'm going outside of the line of the mountain edge, and that is perfectly fine at this stage because I'm going to show you a masking technique to hide that. And I've accidentally clicked so if I just bring that back up here, it should be fine, and we'll include this bit into our shadow later. So once I've done that, I'm going to quickly turn on this layer, and I'm going to go to edit, fill, go to color, or the contents drop down menu, click on color, and then we see we want a colour in between this grey and this grey. So we don't want to have the shadow in the background darker than this foreground aspect, because otherwise it will feel weird. So if we just click between the two, the colour picker or the pipette will enable us to see the range that we can go in. So if you keep an eye on this here, you will see that it gives us an idea of the range we need to go in. So anything around here, click OK, and we now have that filled in. So I'm now just going to go in and actually just draw over this section here, thinking about that, because actually that shadow that will be in shadow itself. I'm just going to go to edit, fill, click OK. So what I'm going to do now is just run through the rest of the scene really quickly. And get that all kind of put into shadow. Not being too precious over this. And again, we'll get some light on the top here, but not so much down here. So you need to actually look at your own pieces and kind of work out where's best. And I'm just going to kind of tie this in as well here. And down the back here as well. Just going to kind of bring that in like so. So now we have the shadow added. If I turn the opacity down, you can kind of see here where we need this shadow to actually cut off with the mountain range. So we're going to create a layer mask to do this. So what we're going to do is click on the original background layer. So we want to go to this layer here, hold Command over or Control over the image and left mouse button click, and it will see we consider marching ants, which means we have selected that shape, that surface. We're then going to click on MR Shadow 1. We're going to turn the visibility back on, and then down here you will see a grey rectangle with a dark circle inside. We're going to click on that. Now what's happened is the outline has now been cut into, the shadow's been cut into that mountain line, and it's done this by creating a visibility map where black is hidden and white is visible. And that means that we can always get the rest of the shadow back if we wanted. So for example, if I was to select this layer here, although we can't see it, if I was to paint in white over here, you'll see that I can get that shadow back if I wanted to, for whatever reason. So obviously we don't need that, so I'm going to do Command Z to undo. Equally, if I wanted to hide some of the shadow, if we were to paint in black, on this shadow layer, on the mask layer, on the shadow layer, you'll see that we can actually take it away as well, which is quite helpful at times. So we're now going to add in some texture to this mountain range. So I'm going to create a new layer, and we're just going to call this MR1 Spatter. And what we're going to do is go to Window, Brushes, and the brush menu will come out at this point. So when you first load up these brushes, all these folders will be closed, and so because of that, if I need you to go to Special Effect Brushes, and inside there you will see Kyle's spatter brushes, and you'll see the Supreme spatter brush to the right of the normal spatter brush. So I want you to select that as your brush. Then we're going to resize the brush. So we're going to do that here by going up to size, and we can start to see an idea of scale. And I think actually it was probably alright before. So let's just take that back down. So I think something like that would be quite nice. So we want this to be the same colour as the light area of this background shadow. So to change to that colour, if we click on the Alt key, or if you're on a Mac, sometimes it's the Alt. On my MacBook Pro, it is the Options button, and it brings up the pipette, and that allows me to select the light grey. And you'll notice down here on the left hand side that has turned to grey. So now what I'm going to do is start to paint over this surface just by tapping either with my stylus. Today I'm using a mouse. Obviously I would encourage you to get a graphics tablet. Mine's in for repairs at the moment. So once we've got that in, you will see that we now have a texture emerging. Now obviously the issue here is that we have a lot of this in the air, and we don't want that. So what we're going to do is create another mask again. I've undone my layer name by accident, so I'm just going to rename that MR1 Spatter. So what I'm going to do is again go to Mountain Range 1, which is our very background mountain range. Hold Command over the image on the layer, so Command over the image layer image, and click. And now we have selected it, and we can tell that by the fact there are marching ants. What we're then going to do is click on MR1 Spatter layer, and we're going to click on the mask again, and now we have masked that layer too. So we're now going to create one more layer, and we're going to this time edit a brush in another way. So we've looked at the kind of brush presets, and you can download numerous ones of these off the internet with all different types of brushes and effects in there. We're going to create a new layer, and we're going to call this one MR1, and we'll call this brush edit texture TXTR. And this time we're going to go to Windows, Brush, or alternatively you can look for the symbol of two brushes together, and this time we're going to go to general brushes and click on hard round brush. We're then going to set this to 8 pixels. So the reason we're using this menu here is that we want access to brush settings. You can also get to brush settings by going to brush window, and then brush settings. You can also click on this icon here, which is a brush with some bullet points next to it. So we want our hard round brush, size 8. We're then going to go and click on shape dynamics, and we're going to put the size jitter up to 100%. And this then changes the line from like quite a crisp line to a bobbly line. So I'm just going to actually just change this to black, and just so you can kind of see this, how it works. If I take the size up, you'll see that line is all kind of bibbly bobbly, and it's just adding a variation to it as we go along. So I'm going to take my size back to 8 pixels. And then what we're going to do is turn on scattering, and we're going to put scatter up to 1000%. And we're going to go to color dynamics. We're going to make sure we have apply per tip clicked on, and we want the brightness jitter to be on about 16%. We're then going to select by holding Alt or Option or or that's it if you're in Windows as well. Sorry, we're going to do that and select the darker color. And this time, we're now going to draw onto this layer, and we're going to add more texture to it. But this time, it's going to give much variation to what we're doing, as you can see. So what I'm going to do is where those hard shadows are, I'm going to use this quite sparingly. I don't want to go kind of over the top with this, but I'm just going to start to paint in some areas where we have a bit more kind of texture appearing, and this will just start to add and give a little bit more depth to our scene. So I'm just going to bring that in as well. Just kind of patch that down there, and you know, it's less is more. So try not to go too over the top. I've caught the side there. So try not to go too over the top. You know, sometimes it can be a little bit too much, and we're looking for variation in the scene. So once we've done that, we're going to do the same thing again. We're going to go back to our bottom mountain range layer. We're going to hold Command or Control and Windows and click on the image, and then we're going to go to click on our MR on brush layer, edit texture just to make sure we've got the right one, and then we're going to click on the mask, and that again gives us that nice clean line. So we're going to put all these in a folder. So we're going to click on the top layer of MR1 for mountain range 1 and go to mountain range 1 below, and I'm going to click on the folder symbol. So click on the top, hold shift, click on the bottom, click on the folder, rename the folder mountain range 1. Remember, we're looking for that professional file management. So now we're going to add in some clouds, and we're going to do that with a custom brush. So we've looked at using presets, we've looked at adjusting the brush features, and now we're going to create a brush ourselves. So I found this image of a lonely cloud on the internet. So you can download this from our Moodle page. If you go to the Moodle course page and week 3, you'll be able to download this. So pause the video. Once you've got it downloaded, come back. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is double click on the background. This will unlock that layer and remove this padlock. And then we're going to go to the polygonal lasso tool and go down to the magnetic lasso tool. And we're going to push Command plus to zoom in and kind of frame this cloud. And then what I'm going to do is, starting down here, I'm going to click and I'm going to draw along the edge of the cloud. And as I draw, the magnetic lasso will literally kind of pick up that space, and we can then use this to make some marks, to make our brush of a cloud, to add some atmosphere to our scene. So we've got that texture on the mountains, and now we're going to add this onto there. So as we're working up here, you'll see that the sky and the cloud have a really kind of harsh edge, and so it's really easy for the tool to kind of read where you're kind of cutting out from. This won't be the same on every kind of image, and so sometimes we do have to click once or twice just to kind of help it along in terms of reading exactly what we want it to pick up. Okay, and sometimes it will just kind of guess if it can't read too much. And I'm not too fussy about the bottom being perfect because it's not such crisp white. Once we get to the end, back to where we started, we can kind of click that under. So what we're going to do is push Command if you're on a Mac, or Control X, which will cut the layer, and then push Command Shift and V, and that will paste it back in place, but it will paste it on a new layer. So now we have this. I'm going to hide the layer by clicking the eye. Now we have our cloud. We need to soften the edges. So I'm going to go to the brush tool. I'm going to turn this up to about 50 pixels. And I'm going to take the hardness down to 0. What I'm then going to do is I'm actually just going to go around the edge of the image. My apologies, we don't want the brush tool. That is an incorrection from me. Absolutely not. We want the eraser tool. And we want to set that to 50 pixels. And we want a hardness of 0. And then what we're going to do is around the edge of the cloud, we're just going to go in and just sort of take away the edge. So where those blue pixels are, we kind of want to get rid of those, and we also want a nice kind of fade into the cloud so it feels natural. Remember, clouds are soft, and their density is only really seen once there's a high density of the cloud, and those edges really fade out. They don't just come to a sort of like a hard surface edge or end. So we're just going to go in and kind of take away that edge like so. And once we're done, clean those bits away, we end up with something that looks like that. So now all we need to do is crop the image to define the brush size. So we're just going to click on the crop tool, which is here. You can also push C on the keyboard. We're then going to bring this in, bring that up, and push enter. We now have our brush area defined. Now what we need to do is take the colour out of the image and invert it. To do this, we go to Image, Adjustments, Desaturate. That will remove all of the colour information from the scene. Then we're going to go to Image, Adjustments, and go to Invert. And that will now invert the image for us to create our brush. So we're then going to go to the marquee tool. We can push M or click on the rectangular marquee tool up here, click and drag over the whole scene. Go to File, go to Edit, and click on Define Brush Preset. And you can name your tool whichever you feel. I've made one earlier, so I don't need to do this, but click OK once you have done so. We're then going to go back to our scene, and from here what we're going to do is create a new layer above mountain range 1, above mountain range 2, and above mountain range 3. We're going to rename these Cloud Layer 1, Cloud Layer 2, and Cloud Layer 3. Once we've done that, we're then going to go to the brush tool, and we're going to change the colour. So we're going to go down to here, and we're going to pick white. Click OK. So we click on the actual colour here, and it will bring up the options. And then what we're going to do is, under our brush, we're going to go all the way down to the bottom, and we will see the cloud that has been created. Then in the brush settings, we're going to go to our opacity and take this down to 8. And on Cloud Layer 3, we're just going to actually, if I start to paint at this point, we'll just get the same shape recurring. So actually what we're going to do is go to the brush tool here and go to Shape Dynamics, and we're going to put an angle jitter on at about 15–16%. And from here, we're then just going to start to bring that across and just start to paint that on. Okay, I'm going to make the brush a little bit smaller actually, and you know, we can have some areas that have a little bit more density than others, and I'm actually going to try and build this in here. So bring that across there, like so. And then go to cloud layer 2, and again just going to start to paint on that cloud, and just keep clicking. Every time we click, the shape changes slightly, or every time you tap with that stylus it will change. And as you can see, we're now starting to get that atmosphere appear across the scene how we want it to. And again, cloud layer 3. Oh, sorry, wrong layer. Cloud layer 1 at the furthest background, I do apologise. And as we focus on that bottom area here and keep building that up, so the mid-ground kind of gets distance put between it, and then we can start to actually bring this up and bring that in. So the final thing now is, I'm kind of happy with that. We've got a nice feeling going on there, and if I turn on the colour we can start to see that come through. Is that I want to bring just a bit of balance with the tone. So at the top of here I'm going to add in a gradient. So I can push G or go to the gradient tool on the left hand side, click on this image here, which will bring up this menu, and we're actually going to create our own. So I can see I've made one here earlier. So what we're going to do is pick, this is our like gradient area, so we can kind of like move colours around and reposition it and so on. What we're going to do is click on this colour icon, change the colour here to a grey that's roughly around the same as that foreground image, so we want something like around here. Click OK, and then click on this square at the right hand side and change that to white. We're then going to name this Sky Fade and click New. This will then appear in your menu set, so if we click on the down arrow and we go to the bottom, it will then should appear in here or in one of the folders. If you have one of the folders open at the time of making, that's where it will appear. So I'm going to click on that folder, that icon, sorry, and on a new layer above the background, so I'm going to click on background and then click new layer and call this Sky Gradient. And what we're going to do is then click and drag this down, and you can see it's a bit too dark, so I'm going to actually just do this to here. I actually still think it's a little bit too dark, so I'm going to keep going, so I'm kind of happy with it. So something like that, and now we have our scene complete. So I hope you follow us along. If not, go back and redo and give it a go yourself, and I look forward to seeing your results on your Wix site. Thank you.